A cluster of lights flashed across the empty realm with a speed as quick as lightning. In a flash, it appeared at the edge of the darkness before finally disappearing. Yao Ming lifted his eyes and looked into the distance where the flowing light was, then turned to speak to Xiao Yan beside him, addressing him as Brother Xiao Yan, that with their speed, they should be able to reach the Eastern Dragon Island in another 10+ minutes. Xiao Yan slightly nodded in agreement, suggesting they increase their speed. His eyes looked to the depths of the darkness as the fist in his sleeve was slowly clenched. He waved his sleeve, and his speed once again soared. Upon seeing him go even faster, Yao Ming and the rest could only hurriedly follow. This flight continued for a couple of minutes before Xiao Yan's body suddenly stilled. He frowned as he looked to a part of the empty realm to his left, stating that there was a familiar aura. An intense energy explosion was emitted from within the empty space. Immediately, a figure spat out blood and pulled back, falling into a group of people. The figure's face was pale as his eyes furiously looked around. Over 10 figures appeared in the surroundings a moment later, all of their auras extremely powerful, clearly all very strong. Especially the 2 elders leading them, their auras appeared ordinary, but a terrifying pressure spread from them. They were surprisingly 2 peak experts who had reached the Banshing class. There were around 7 to 8 figures surrounded by the 10 individuals, but most were seriously injured. Among these people were 2 familiar faces, He Qing, who had helped Xiao Yan a couple of times, and Elder Zhu Li, whom Xiao Yan had met once before. Only these 2 within the group appeared to be in a slightly better state, but their faces were currently extremely gloomy. They had been out on patrol and, upon returning, learned of the 3 large Dragon Islands' attack on the Eastern Dragon Island. Before they could hurry back with great speed, they ended up meeting this group from the 3 large Dragon Islands, which had sealed the Eastern Dragon Island. A big battle immediately erupted. The result was something that need not be mentioned with 2 Banshings. The other party had easily defeated them and chased them here, clearly planning on eliminating all of them. A man wearing battle armor mockingly glanced at Zhu Li and laughed, addressing him as Zhu Li and claiming that the 3 great dragon kings were the true rulers, and that they had found some fake from an unknown place in an attempt to unite the ancient void dragon, which was really too naive of them. He was one of the commanders of this unit, and possessed the strength of an intermediate Banshee. Zhu Li's expression was gloomy as he commented that they would know better than he did in their hearts whether it was a fake, and it looked like they had already forgotten the rules of their tribe under the rule of the 3 great dragon kings. That old armored man frowned slightly upon hearing these words, his expression a little unnatural. Within the ancient void dragon tribe, the royal clan held absolute authority over the ordinary tribe members. The pressure that originated from within the bloodline caused an ordinary tribe member to be afraid of fighting against the royal clan. The 2 of them possessed a high status within the 3 great dragon islands and naturally understood that the young dragon emperor on the Eastern Dragon Island did indeed possess an extremely pure royal bloodline. But they had been ruled by the 3 dragon kings for many years, so their way of thinking had been altered. They might not dare to directly attack that young dragon emperor, but they did not feel much fear while attacking the others. A red-faced old man impatiently waved his hand and cried out, standing beside that old armored man, urging xianxia not to waste breath with this old fellow but to quickly finish them off, as the resistance from the Eastern Dragon Island was more intense than expected and they must return quickly. He Qing furiously cursed, calling them 2 old bastards and stating that their 3 great dragon islands did not have the ability to destroy his Eastern Dragon Island, and once the Dragon Emperor became stronger, their 3 great dragon islands would simply wait to die. The red-faced old man coldly laughed, saying that was only if they could wait until that time came. His eyes immediately turned cold as he threw a palm at He Qing across the empty space. A frightening wind tore through the air and swiftly smashed into He Qing's body with lightning-like speed. The current He Qing might have reached the 8th change peak of the Do Zun class, but how could he compare with a high-level Bansheng? The armor on his body immediately crumbled. A large mouthful of blood was spat out as his body collided with a few other tribe members behind him. That red-faced old man coldly laughed with disdain after causing He Qing to spit out blood and fly back with a palm, calling him an old fellow who didn't know his limit and dared to roar at this elder. He Qing's eyes immediately turned red after suffering this heavy blow. His body suddenly swelled to twice its size. The red-faced old man coldly smiled and shook his head upon seeing He Qing go mad. He simply waved his hand and gave a command to kill all of them and not allow anyone to live. Zhu Li became furious, shouting, How dare you! A monstrous dochi erupted as he threw a punch forward. A vast and mighty dochi gathered into a 1,000-foot large dragon that crazily charged toward the red-faced old man. The body of that old armored man swelled as Zhu Li attacked. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a half-man, half-dragon combat state. He roared at the sky before shooting forward like a cannonball. With just a punch, he completely shattered the giant energy dragon, taunting Zhu Li that both of their strengths were similar, and asking how he would fight now that he was injured. That elder, who had turned into a half-dragon, stepped through empty air. His body strangely appeared above Elder Zhu Li's head as a large dragon claw violently tore through the air, accompanied by an extremely sharp wind. Elder Zhu Li clenched his teeth as this extremely ferocious attack came down from above. An armor with dragon symbols on it appeared around his body, after which, the armor appeared like a furious dragon as it violently collided with that half-dragon elder. That red-faced elder coldly smiled and waved his sleeve as Elder Zhu Li engaged that half-man, half-dragon elder in an intense battle. Each time he did so, a warrior from the eastern dragon island spit out blood and fell back. The armor on their bodies would also explode. Finally, the warriors from the 3 great dragon tribes would pounce on that warrior from the eastern dragon island. A fierce fury immediately erupted within He Qing's eyes after seeing his tribe members being captured one after another, vowing to fight with them until the end. A crazy punch smashed into 2 figures heading his way, causing them to vomit blood and fly back. His foot stomped through the air as his body shot toward that red-faced elder with lightning-like speed. The red-faced old man coldly laughed and shook his head upon seeing this attack, mocking him as an ant-like existence who actually dared to challenge him. He clenched his fist, and dense scales swiftly appeared. He quickly threw a punch as a deep sonic boom formed under his fist with a bang, after which it collided with He Qing, who had explosively shot over. This hard collision caused the red-faced elder's body to barely tremble. He also took half a step back. On the other hand, He Qing's arm revealed a vein and emitted a puff sound as it shot out many blood arrows. The vague sound of bones cracking also appeared. His hand feebly fell as his body flew back a distance of 10,000 feet before slowly coming to a halt. He Qing remained suspended in the empty realm with blood covering his body. The strength in his body had been shattered by a punch from the red-faced old man. If his physical body wasn't extremely strong, that punch would likely have blasted his body apart. He thought to himself that he was going to die, his eyes gradually becoming blurry. At this moment, he had been seriously injured by that red-faced old man. Although he felt dissatisfied in his heart, he also understood that there was an extremely big gap between him and the other party. The red-faced elder appeared as the space in front of He Qing fluctuated, his eyes cold and indifferent as they looked at He Qing. After which, he slowly lowered his body and placed his hand gently above He Qing's head, a cold glint surging within his somewhat turbid eyes. He told He Qing to relax, that he would throw him into the dragon tomb once he was dead, which could be considered a resting place for him. Elder Zhu Li, who was being dragged into the distance, felt his body turn icy cold upon seeing He Qing's situation. His eyes were blood red as he roared, addressing Huazhan and warning that the Dragon Emperor would not let him off if he dared to kill him. That red-faced old man shook his head and ridiculed, saying, "He, the Dragon Emperor? That is only if she can survive the combined strength of the 3 Dragon Kings." He lowered his head and looked at He Qing, who was planning to gather his strength to unleash an attack, continuing with pity in his voice that He Qing was really an extremely hard character, but unfortunately, he had chosen the wrong side. He shook his head somewhat impatiently after uttering those words, grabbed the top of He Qing's head, and slowly used his strength, cruelly smiling that the victory this time around belonged to the 3 great dragon islands. But He Qing could rest assured that many people would accompany him so he would not feel lonely. A cruel smile surfaced on the red-faced old man's face. His sharp fingers gently pressed down and formed 5 bloody holes in He Qing's head, but he suddenly sensed a somewhat icy cold hand quietly land on his head as he was about to shatter He Qing's head. At the same time, a soft voice was slowly transmitted into his ear, and his body completely stilled like a statue. The voice asked him to tell whether he thought that he would be able to shatter He Qing's head faster than the speaker doing the same to his. He Qing, who had already shut his eyes to await death, suddenly opened both of his eyes upon hearing the soft voice that did not contain any anger. A familiar skinny figure appeared in his eyes. He stammered, "Xiao Yan?" He Qing's eyes were extremely stunned as he looked at the skinny figure who had appeared beside him, especially when he saw that the figure's hand was gently pressing down on the red-faced old man's head. His eyelids involuntarily twitched. The red-faced old man's body completely stilled at this moment, not daring to move even a bit. He could sense the frightening strength of the hand on his head, and clearly understood that his head would explode into a cluster of bloody fog if this hand gently shook. He wondered just where this monster had come from and why he had not been able to sense his approach. His eyes continued to flicker, and his expression rapidly changed. Xiao indifferently glanced at the old man and gave him a command to release his hand. The red-faced old man's expression changed. He quickly rotated his eyes and proposed that he would count to 3 and they would release together, asking what Xiao thought. He Qing's face turned purple as he softly roared, urging Xiao to kill him, stating that he was an elite banshee from the Northern Dragon Island and had a much higher status than himself, and it was worthwhile to exchange his life for his. The red-faced old man's eyes turned cold. He immediately felt the desire to shatter He Qing's head, but he could only suppress the murderous desire in his heart the moment he thought about this mysterious person, whom he had never met. He asked in a deep voice what Xiao thought. Xiao smiled and agreed. The red-faced elder rejoiced. 3 numbers were quickly uttered from his mouth. After the last number sounded, he felt that icy cold hand above his head indeed shift. He hurriedly tossed He Qing aside and flew away with lightning-like speed. He then asked loudly who this friend was, stating that this matter was entirely a matter of their ancient Void Dragon tribe and hoping that the friend would not intervene. He warned that the Dragon Kings of the 3 Great Dragon Islands were only a short distance away, and if they were attracted here, it would be extremely difficult for him to escape. The red-faced man managed to clearly see the person who had intervened earlier after flying away. He was immediately startled after seeing that this person was so young. His voice was deep as he spoke. Xiao acted as though he did not hear the red-faced man's cry. He lowered his body and helped He Qing up, then took out a medicinal pill and stuffed it into He Qing's mouth, asking how he was. He Qing bitterly smiled and shook his head, saying it wasn't enough to kill him. He looked at the red-faced old man and regretfully said that Xiao should have killed him earlier, as this person was an elite banshee and killing him would have been equivalent to cutting off the flesh of the Northern Dragon Island, and this kind of opportunity was not something that could be found all the time. He Qing's voice contained a feeling of great disappointment. From the way he saw it, using his life in exchange for that of an elite banshee was incredibly worthwhile. This unexpected change was also sensed by the half-dragon elder who was fighting with Elder Julie. He frowned and cried out loud, asking Huizhan what had happened. His attacks remained extremely ruthless as he spoke. His dragon claws were swung and a sharp wind forced Elder Julie into a somewhat miserable state. Elder Julie had been injured to begin with, so he was unable to defeat the other party. The red-faced old man, who was called Huizhan, stared intently at Xiao. He could sense a vague pressure from Xiao. Hence, he did not dare to be careless as he replied in a deep voice that a problem had occurred. That half-dragon elder frowned upon hearing this. He suddenly threw a palm and forced Elder Julie back. His eyes looked over and finally landed on Xiao. Those eyes immediately narrowed as he cried out in a cold voice, addressing him as a friend and stating that interfering in the matters of his ancient Void Dragon tribe in this empty realm was not a smart decision. Elder Julie had also used this opportunity to sigh in relief. He looked at the human figure beside He Qing and was also greatly surprised, but he appeared to have recalled something as his expression changed. His body moved and appeared beside Xiao, asking why he had come here, stating that the matter here was not something that he could intervene with, and urging him to bring He Qing and leave, and that he would protect him. The red-faced old man's eyes gradually revealed some unfriendliness as he stared at Xiao and spoke, saying that trying to escape was not so easy and that this was his last chance. Xiao slightly frowned. He suddenly took a step forward, and his body disappeared in an instant, declaring that an intermediate banshee actually dared to act arrogantly in front of him. The expression of the red-faced old man drastically changed upon watching Xiao disappear. His body turned into a ray of light that hurriedly pulled back, but his body had just moved when a large hand penetrated the space in front of him and landed above his head. At the same time, an ice-cold voice was transmitted through the air, ordering him to move again and he would die. The red-faced old man's eyes were shocked as he looked at the figure that had slowly appeared from the empty space in front of him. A moment later, his somewhat hoarse voice slowly seeped out from between his teeth, stating that Xiao Yan was an elite douxing. The red-faced old man was not the only one who was stunned by Xiao Yan's attack. Even He Qing and Elder Zhu Li were completely astounded as they watched Xiao Yan move, unable to recover. When Xiao Yan had left the Eastern Dragon Island back then, he had merely been a 5-star Dozun. In just a couple of years, he had leaped from a 5-star Dozun to a douxing. He Qing muttered in stunned disbelief, exclaiming, "This damn, how can he expect one to continue living?" He had trained for many years but had only managed to climb to the 8th change peak of the Dozun class, with still a great distance to the Banshin class. In the end, Xiao Yan, who had been weaker than him back then, had already advanced beyond him. Xiao Yan pressed his hand against the head of the red-faced old man. He glanced at the red face that was gradually turning pale, after which, his finger gently pressed on the old man's forehead. With the press of this finger, a bloody hole ended up forming on the forehead of the red-faced old man. The aura of the old man's body quickly became weak. Xiao Yan randomly touched the man's body with his hand, and a symbol appeared on the red-faced old man's forehead, sealing his dou qi. Xiao Yan completed all of these actions before grabbing the red-faced old man to move. He appeared beside He Qing and randomly tossed that old man over, laughing that there was no need to sacrifice his life to capture him. He Qing was a little dull as he received the red-faced old man, who was in an unknown condition. The powerful and untouchable elite Banshing in his eyes had become this useless in Xiao Yan's hands. Within a couple of minutes, that person, who had been acting high and mighty earlier, was no different than a dead dog. Elder Zhu Li by the side also quietly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Even at his peak condition, he would have had to experience a bitter battle in order to defeat this person, yet in Xiao Yan's hands he thought to himself that this fellow had reached this level within a short few years and was indeed extraordinary. No wonder he was a friend of the Dragon Emperor. That half-dragon elder in the distance was stunned because of this scene. He recovered a moment later, and a chill surged from his feet into his heart. A stern cry was decisively emitted from his mouth, ordering a withdrawal. Since the other party was able to capture Huizhan with such ease, that person was definitely a genuine douxing. An expert of that level was not someone they could deal with. Remaining behind would only be sharing the same fate as Huizhan. The half-dragon elder was the first to pull back after his cry sounded. Within a couple of flashes, he had appeared at the edge of the darkness. He needed to report this matter as soon as possible. At that time, there would naturally be some experts from the island who would finish this brat off. Elder Zhu Li hurriedly cried out while feeling startled, urging Xiao Yan not to allow them to escape, otherwise, they may end up alerting the enemy. He had not expected that old fellow to simply just run away. Xiao Yan grinned and nodded, but he did not move. His eyes glanced in the direction of the fleeing group. Around 2 minutes or so later, a ray of light suddenly flashed. Many figures rushed over from that direction and appeared in front of everyone. It was surprisingly Yao Ming's group. At this moment, they were holding some people in their hands. That half-dragon elder, who had fled earlier, was also among them. Yao Ming laughed, throwing the half-dragon elder, who had been beaten unconscious, to Xiao Yan, and remarked that this old fellow was really cunning, but what could he do with just the strength of a mere Banshing? Xiao Yan received this elder and sealed his dou qi up. After which, he tossed this person to He Qing. His eyes landed on Elder Zhu Li as he laughed, introducing Yao Ming as the 9 Serene Deep Ground Python Tribe's chief. Zhu Li's expression changed slightly upon hearing 9 Serene Deep Ground Python Tribe. His eyes cautiously looked at Yao Ming as he said that it was rumored that the 3 large dragon islands had dispatched people to ask for other tribes' cooperation to deal with their eastern dragon island. Yao Ming smiled and replied, telling this elder not to be worried, that the one who agreed to cooperate with the 3 large dragon islands was that useless brother of his, but he had regained his tribal chief position from him. Now, he had been invited by brother Xiao Yan, and if the eastern dragon island did not despise this help, his 9 Serene Deep Ground Python tribe could lend a hand. Elder Zhu Li was startled upon hearing this offer. His eyes landed on Xiao Yan. Only after seeing Xiao Yan nod with a smile did he reveal an expression of wild joy. Their eastern dragon island desperately needed reinforcements. Xiao Yan asked what the situation of the eastern dragon island was like now. Elder Zhu Li softly sighed and shook his head. His voice was low and deep, saying it was very bad. The 3 great dragon islands had poured all over this place. They had made up their minds to kill the Dragon Emperor before she could truly reach her peak. The Eastern Dragon Island was in complete chaos. The Dragon Emperor had been surrounded by the 3 great Dragon Kings. A grave expression appeared on Xiao Yan's face. The situation of the Eastern Dragon Island was worse than he had imagined. Xiao Yan slowly exhaled, stating they should go and head to the Eastern Dragon Island. The fist under his sleeve was slowly tightened. Regardless of how strong the 3 great Dragon Kings were, it was impossible for him to simply ignore Ziyan's current plight. Even light disappeared within the dark, empty realm. This world was monotonous and lonely. At the same time, it was plagued with much danger. There would occasionally be some surging chaotic spatial flow that could forcefully shatter an expert zone. Hence, other than the ancient void dragons, which specialized in spatial strength, seldom would any humans or experts from other races enter the empty realm. Of course, this kind of place might be completely remote and deserted to others, but it was quite beneficial for the ancient void dragon tribe. The chaotic spatial flow in this place was not only able to train their control over spatial strength, but they were also able to use the tearing force of the chaotic flow to train their extremely strong physical bodies. Some light suddenly appeared from within the nothingness. If one were to look in the direction of the light, one would see an extremely huge island suspended in the emptiness. Extremely intense energy explosions continued to be emitted from that enormous island. Wave after wave of wild and violent energy attacks began to sweep in all directions from the island like a storm. Everything within 100,000 feet from that island was completely destroyed. There were quite a number of people waiting gravely in the empty space around the island. Sharp eyes swept around the island. Anyone attempting to charge out of the island would be violently smashed down by the storm-like attacks. These troops had formed an airtight dragnet which completely surrounded the island. 20 people were lingering at a certain spot above the island. Their eyes continued to sweep over this group in the middle. A cold and stern-looking strong man was sitting down in the middle of the group. The aura of this person was quite strong. He was even a little stronger than He Qing. He was an expert who had reached the 9th change peak of the Dozun class. This large man stared intently at the island below. Suddenly, his ears slightly moved as his eyes swung around the empty space in the distance. His body suddenly stood up as he let out a deep cry, warning to be careful, as someone was approaching. A cluster of light suddenly flashed and appeared from deep within the darkness after his last words sounded. It appeared a short distance from the group within a couple of flashes. The eyes of the large man were extremely sharp. He managed to identify He Qing from within the cluster of lights with a glance. His expression sank as he cried out in a cold voice, exclaiming, "He Qing!" and stating they were from the Eastern Dragon Island and ordering an attack. The many human figures cried out in an orderly fashion after hearing his shout. Many powerful energy light pillars shot out. Their combined attack gave them an extremely powerful momentum. However, a faint voice was emitted while these light pillars approached the cluster of lights. Everyone was horrified to watch those many light pillars explode with a bang. Soon after, a frightening strength that could not be resisted surged out of the empty space and violently struck their bodies. This attack was undoubtedly an exterminating force for the warriors from these 3 great dragon islands. The armors on those many warriors were shattered into dust. Other than the big man, who had reached the 9th change peak of the Dozun class, the remaining people fell to the dragon island below. The large man's eyes were shocked as he saw their defenses crumbling in the blink of an eye. He quickly let out a low roar, demanding to know who exactly they were. The flowing lights slowly disappeared a short distance in front of the large man. Xiao Yan stepped out from within a light. His eyes did not pause on the large man in front of him. Instead, they swept over the dragon island below. At this moment, the Eastern Dragon Island was filled with holes. Extremely intense battles erupted all over the place. A wild and violent energy caused the entire island to become much dimmer. Although the Dragon Island was in complete chaos, Xiao Yan could see that the defensive line of the Eastern Dragon Island had shrunk from the outer region to the central Dragon Hall. That location was the middle of the Eastern Dragon Island. In other words, other than the territory around the Dragon Hall, almost 2/3 of the Eastern Dragon Island had been captured by the 3 great Dragon Islands. This situation was quite bad. Xiao Yan's eyes swept around him, but he did not discover a hint of Ziyan. He frowned and had just posed a question when an extremely frightening energy ripple was suddenly transmitted over. Xiao Yan's expression was slightly altered upon sensing this energy fluctuation. He lifted his head and looked for the source of this energy fluctuation. He found a bright sun-like light suspended at that spot. It was possible to vaguely see a couple of figures exchanging blows with lightning-like speed. After each exchange, waves of terrifying energy storm would sweep apart. If they weren't some distance from the Dragon Island, these remnant waves would have completely destroyed the eastern Dragon Island. Xiao Yan's eyes stared intently at the circle of light. A flame slowly surged into both of his eyes, allowing his gaze to penetrate through the light and capture everything inside. A somewhat familiar back with long purple hair that emitted a faint enchantment was the first to be imprinted into his sight. Who else could that familiar demeanor belong to other than Ziyan? However, her current appearance was no longer that of a little girl. Instead, she had become a great beauty. Her tall figure was wrapped within a dark golden form-fitting armor. The armor was not bulky. It pressed against her exquisite and well-proportioned body, outlining her beautiful and sexy curves. The faint temptation hid a bone-piercing chill. The little girl from back then had become such an alluring and bewitching lady. That exquisite face contained an additional cold aura because her eyebrows had been lifted slightly. Although she was still young, it was possible to see a faint aura of authority between her thin eyebrows. Once she fully matured, her demeanor of royalty as the Dragon Emperor of the ancient Void Dragon tribe would frighten anyone looking at her. On the opposite side of Ziyan stood three figures. The three of them possessed middle-aged appearance. Each and every action they made was domineering, revealing their fierce and overbearing nature. Xiao Yan's eyes locked onto the three figures. A grave expression flashed across his eyes. He could sense that those three possessed a strength that surpassed Yao Ming. In other words, those three fellows were, at the very least, 3-star Doshings. Ziyan was holding a long dark golden spear that was taller than her body as she stood within the light sphere. The spear danced and emitted a glaring golden glitter. It had managed to prevent the three great dragon kings from gaining an advantage. Her fighting strength was completely unleashed. It seemed that her dragon phoenix constitution caused her strength to soar. Compared to Xiao Yan, it was likely that she could truly be described as having reached the peak in a single stride. Moreover, this peak was even higher than Xiao Yan. The dragon phoenix possessed the bloodline strength of the ancient void dragon and the heaven phoenix. It was the true ruler of the magical beast world. When a dragon phoenix truly reached the peak, this monstrous existence would not need to feel fear even when facing a legendary Dodi. However, that was in the future. It had only been a short period of time since Ziyan had become Dragon Phoenix. Although her strength had soared during these few years, she still wasn't strong enough to face these three great dragon kings, who were a lot more experienced than her. It was obvious that this stubborn resistance could not last for long. While Xiao Yan had become absent-minded because of the battle in the distance, the large man from earlier suddenly emitted a dragon roar. Xiao Yan's eyes turned cold after being awoken by the dragon roar, stating he was seeking death. He threw a palm forward. That large man, whose body was rapidly pulling back, erupted into a cluster of bloody fog. Elder Zhuli spoke in a deep voice, stating this fellow was sending a message and that many three great Dragon Island experts were hurrying over. Xiao Yan's eyes flickered. He did indeed see many figures rushing in this direction. Without hesitating, he moved his body and led the way to the Dragon Hall, stating they should head to the Dragon Hall first. Yao Ming and the others hurriedly followed behind him. The Dragon Island emitted many loud cries while Xiao Yan's group moved. There were many three great Dragon Island experts in front that were attempting to block Xiao Yan's group. Xiao Yan merely smiled as this obstruction formed. The doji within his body circulated to the limit. He widened his mouth and a sea of flames was spat out. Their frighteningly high temperature caused the expressions of some of the elite Banshing to change. With Xiao Yan's current strength, the strength of his heavenly flame was many times stronger than in the past. A sea of flames had spread by just widening his mouth. If this was in the past, he would have difficulty creating such a great force even if he had drained all of the doji within his body. Xiao Yan waved his hand as the sea of flames blocked the attacks. A fire barrier surrounded his group before they swiftly charged through the sea of flames. They had appeared in the air above the Dragon Hall within a couple of flashes. A thunder-like explosive cry sounded the moment Xiao Yan appeared above the Dragon Hall, demanding where these bastards had come from and daring to intervene in the plans of their three great dragon islands. Immediately, a large black-faced man with a giant ape-like body appeared. He had a ferocious expression as he threw a punch toward Xiao Yan. The frightening strength caused the air within 1,000 feet to completely vanish in an instant. Xu Li's expression slightly changed upon seeing that large black-faced man. He hurriedly cried out, warning Xiao Yan to be careful, that he was the first commander of the Western Dragon Island, Xianmo, and had the strength of a 2-star Doxing. Xiao Yan waved his sleeve. A gentle force delivered everyone to the dragon hall below before he turned his body. His body suddenly swelled and turned into a golden giant that was not inferior to the other party in the blink of an eye. After which, he threw a punch and collided head-on with Xianmo in front of many shocked pairs of eyes, roaring, "Get lost!